should you wear a belt? Hi. So awkward. Hello everyone, and today I'm here to talk to you about when you should use a belt. So belts get a lot of confusing misinformation put around them, and they kind of get demonized a little bit, like it's cheating to use a belt, beginners don't need to use a belt, you should never use a belt, unless you have a strong core, you shouldn't use a belt. Man, I could go on and on about the list of things out there, but today I want to talk to you about when and how to use a belt appropriately. Within the fitness industry, lifting belts have a lot of information around them. They're encouraged as a helpful tool, or they're also demonized as a way that's going to decrease your core strength or make you weaker or shouldn't be used by beginners or are harmful or all these other things. And so I'm going to clear up some of this information today and explain to you when and how to use a belt more appropriately, and if you even need one at all. So weightlifting belt is a tool that you can use in the gym, just like weightlifting straps or anything else that can help you aid in your performance. And there's actually a really good bit of literature that shows that weightlifting belts can help increase your performance and improve the weight that you move in things like your squat, your deadlift, anything that requires heavy bracing and breathing by 5 to 10%, which can be really meaningful, especially if you're competitive or you just care about your own PRs. So the way a weightlifting belt works is that it helps you increase something called the Valsalva maneuver. So when you're lifting, you're doing this thing where you're bracing and breathing, and you're not holding your breath, but rather you're holding in a deep belly breath against kind of your diaphragm, and it's being pushed against something called a closed glottis, which is essentially the flappy thing that goes in the back of your throat that covers up your esophagus versus your windpipe whenever you're going between breathing or eating. So it's basically holding your breath against that. So you're taking your breath, but you're kind of still able to breathe if you want to, but you're holding that deep core breath right in your belly. Like I'm essentially bracing right now, and it's a little hard to talk, but you should be able to breathe through it. So but you're maintaining that bracing and breathing, and I'll stand up and show you in a second here as well. But essentially what a belt allows you to do is it gives you something to push back on. It kind of gives you a little bit of tactile feedback, but a way to increase that inter-abdominal pressure that allows you to increase the weight that you move by doing that, because inter-abdominal pressure will help you move more weight. It is not harmful, and as long as you're not bearing down on your pelvic floor when you're doing it and you're kind of breathing into your diaphragm and your stomach, it's perfectly safe to do, and if anything, it's actually better for your lifting. So when do we use a belt? So there's a lot of misinformation out there that beginners cannot use belts, and only certain people can use belts, and you can only use belts at certain points in time. And so I will say that I do absolutely agree that you should probably be working on your core strength and making sure that you're strong and you feel confident and safe in lifts and not relying on a belt as your fallback when you are lifting. But if you're a beginner and you want to start training with a belt, you plan on competing, you want to practice with the tool that you'll be using, I think that's perfectly okay. I generally like to not use a belt during my warm-up sets or working sets until I get to about 80 to 85% of my 1 rep max, and that's a pretty standard recommendation across the field. Some people will cycle using a belt on in competition heavy or heavy single seasons and then off during other points in time just to practice their bracing and their breathing on their own. But it's not inherently harmful to use a belt, and it's not going to make your core weaker. It's simply going to just allow you to give a tool to brace and breathe against. So as long as you're not neglecting your other core training, you're training without a belt and your other movements, you don't need it for everything that you're doing, you're probably going to be fine in your training. But generally, I recommend using a belt above 80 to 85% of your 1 rep max for either working sets, singles, or anything like that. Or any point in time that you feel like you need that extra bit of bracing and breathing for tactile feedback to help improve your lifts. There's a few different types of weightlifting belts. This one is a Velcro belt, and I've been using this since I started weightlifting. I personally use a 2-pood belt. This is the short height because I'm a short gal. But I used a lever belt for years when I was powerlifting, and there's also belts that have notches like a normal belt. I would say that these belts are probably the most Gen Pop friendly, or people who are using Olympic weightlifting or CrossFit, where lever belts are probably more common in powerlifting, bodybuilding type circles, things like that. But you can use whatever belt's available to you if you want to use one, if at all. You do not have to use a belt in the gym, but if you do, I'd probably recommend one of these Velcro ones if you're just kind of a general lifter. But if you're a little bit more serious, you're kind of competing, doing powerlifting type things, look into lever belts or other belts, but make sure they match the standards of whatever divisions that you plan on competing in, because they only allow certain types of gear versus others, and that's a little bit beyond the scope of what I know, but just make sure you look into that to make sure the belt that you're using and practicing with is as good as anything else that you're allowed to do in competition. And on one last important note, it's important to recognize that belts are tools just like anything else. Just like grips and or straps can help you a little bit more to pull more weight or move more weight in the gym, they will not make up for not doing grip training whatsoever. You still need grip to do things, you still need core strength to lift, you still need your general strength to lift and move. So it's not going to fix what you don't fix in your lifting at all, but it simply gives you an extra tool to brace and breathe against, slightly move more weight, and potentially just do more volume in the gym. So it's a little bit advantageous to use that if you're trying to increase volume, training, give you something to pressure against, and as long as you're not using it for everything, you're perfectly fine and safe to use it, and you can start using it now if you want to. Again, to repeat what I said earlier, just do your warm-up sets without it. and work up to it, and maybe make sure that you're able to brace and breathe without it on your own. Practice that first, get that under, I was gonna say get that under your belt before you start, but that would be pun intended. Get familiar with what that feels like, and then have that belt as a tactile brace, as a tactile cue to brace against and use in your lifting. So now I'm gonna show you how to use the belt and lift with it as well. So when we're lifting in the gym, we're gonna take our belt and we're going to wanna put it right around our abdomen. I have my microphone on. I think I'm gonna have to move that. I think we'll be okay. I don't usually squat with a microphone on. You wanna kind of put it right around. You don't wanna put it super high right above your stomach, but you don't wanna put it super low kind of on your pelvic floor type area or you're right close to your pubic bone. You kind of wanna put it right over where that natural waist sits. I don't really have a waist because I'm built straight up and down, but hypothetically, if you have one, you know what I'm talking about. So you wanna take the strap. And so since I'm using a Velcro belt, I'm gonna loop it in here, but you can use whatever it is that you use in the gym. And so I'm gonna take that, and what I do is before I lift, you'll watch this in my other lifting videos, is I'm gonna take a deep breath and pull that in as tight as I can so that when I'm breathing against it, I'm able to brace directly into that belt. And then I can release it like that whenever I'm done. So again, take a deep belly breath where I'm bracing and breathing against it. I can feel that in my core. I'm not bearing down on my pelvic floor. I'm not holding a breath in my chest. I'm taking a nice deep brace breath right there in my abdomen. You can almost poke against your belly and feel it. You can see I'm still able to talk and breathe, but I'm still nice and braced. So then I'm just simply taking that breath, sucking in my belly so that I can get that nice compression on that belt there, so I'm able to push against and really brace against it, so that when I take that deep breath and I lift, I am pressing against the belt here, so I'm able to drive that pressure outward into the belt. Again, it's not in my chest, it's not bearing down on my floor, it's driving into the belt. So that when I go to do my lifts, I'm able to brace and breathe through that a little bit more strategically and simply move more weight. So let's look at it during a squat. So I'm gonna show you what that looks like during a squat. Now these are pretty lightweight squats for me. But essentially I take the belt, same thing. We're going to make it nice and tight, deep breath. Pull it in as tight as it goes. Deep breath into the thing. I like to set up my squat like I do every single time. Get under. I take a 1, 2, 3 deep breath. 3 steps back. And I like to brace and breathe in that belt so I can feel all of that pressure driving around my abdomen. Shoulders back. So that way when I'm ascending in that squat, I feel myself driving that breath into the edge of my belt, and it almost feels like it's relieving some of that pressure and the weight of the lift. You will be able to tell that whenever you are wearing a belt after you do warm-up sets for heavier sets, you actually will start to feel like it's a little bit easier than it should be as if you weren't doing it as well. And that comes from being able to do like 5 to 10% more within your lifting. So I hope that was informative to you all. I don't want you guys to fear belts. It's just a tool on many other tools that you can use in lifting. You still need a good training program. You still need to be able to brace and breathe. You still need core strength and leg strength and upper body strength and all the strength to support your weightlifting goal. A belt isn't a band-aid to fix anything, but it also probably isn't a bad thing to use. It's just simply another tool in your toolbox of training. So you need to train smart, you need to train well, and you need to do all of the things that you need to do in a training program. But if you want to use a belt as a tool to complement your training, improve and or practice it because you want to compete, or you simply want that little bit of advantage in the gym, use it. You don't have to use it, you never have to use it. If it's just another piece of equipment that costs money that's gonna stop you from joining the gym, then don't do it at all. It's totally okay. You can still brace and breathe and move some pretty heavy weight without a belt whatsoever. You're not gonna get injured because you didn't use a belt. It's just a tool to allow you to have a slight advantage in the gym if that's what you're looking. So if you found this helpful, go ahead and like, subscribe, comment, tell me if you learned anything. And if you want a training program that will help you improve your squats, your deadlifts, your bench, your bracing, your breathing, all those tools and make you a better, stronger lifter, we would love to have you in Willis Method. Catch you guys in the next video.